Hi, Ralph.
Hi, Jim. How are you doing today?
Okay. Well, in our last podcast, we talked about social media,
We did,
and
and
we sort of looked at it in a general kind of way. And I said in the future we'll look at specific platforms. There are about 10 of them that are, pretty prominent, including Pinterest and Reddit and LinkedIn. And of course, the one we'll get to is TikTok. But today, I thought we would look at some of the research that's been done with particularly adolescents
okay,
and the use of social media. So we're not going to name names, but we're just going to use the term social media in general. It's a global kind of term.
okay. And one of the things that we can talk about, Jim, is that what we said last time was some general views of the conservatives and liberals, but in terms of U.S. adults, now these are research figures from Pew Research. Um, 64% say mostly negative, 25% say neither positive nor negative, and 10% say mostly positive.
Wow. Okay. So it's interesting, Ralph. People are using this stuff, a lot. Like one Facebook, what do we say, had 3 billion
3 billion
users.
users.
But most of the people in, say, the United States think that it's a harmful site
Harmful site or neutral.
or neutral. Okay.
75% say 65, 64% say harmful.
Okay.
So if you break that down, we can say that if you're a Republican or you're leaning Republican, 78% say that it is mostly negative. If you're a Democrat or leaning Democrat, 53% say that it's mostly negative. So even those people who are most inclined to say it's okay still say it's mostly negative.
Huh. Interesting. So let's take a look at the users, particularly adolescents. So we get a kid who's what, 12 or 13 years of age,
Okay.
and any idea how much time that person is spending on social media?
Well, if I remember correctly, we're looking at up to 4 or 5 hours a day.
Okay, so you have a child who's um, gotten up to go to school at say 6 in the morning. They're off to school and they're there by 8. They spend from 8 until what, 4, 3 or 4 in school.
3, let's say.
Okay, another hour getting home, so it's now at 4 o'clock. And now they're going to spend 4 or 5 hours on social media, which puts it up to about, what, from 4 o'clock to plus 5 hours? Help me with this, Ralph. That's 9 o'clock, right?
9 o'clock. Now you have to take an hour out for supper,
Okay, maybe a bath.
maybe a bath, maybe some homework.
Oh,
So,
heavens, right.
so now we're looking at, let's say, best case, 10 o'clock, our 13-year-old is going to bed.
Uh-huh. Now, here's a kid that's been on the run for the entire day with no downtime, and do you think that child is going to go to bed and get to sleep easily?
Probably not.
They're going to be pretty wired. Yeah.
And the thing, Jim, I guess that I could echo today's world with is back in the day when my parents sent me to bed. I would go up to my room and throw the covers over me and take my book and my flashlight and read.
Uh-huh.
So
You always were a rebel.
so the phone is today's flashlight.
Okay.
So now you can go into your room and lie there and do social media on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the hour that you've gone on the bus and the hour you come home on the bus, you were probably on social media in some way or other.
Okay.
So you think, okay, well now, you know, we've got 2 hours back and forth. We've got maybe another 2 hours when we're in bed.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say we've got our 4 hours.
Okay.
Now,
We're wiring ourselves up pretty much, right?
that means that we didn't get to sleep until midnight. And what do we know about adolescent need for sleep?
Well, 9 to 10 hours.
Okay.
Okay, so we don't get to sleep until midnight, and hey, we're back up at 6 o'clock the next morning, right?
6 hours sleep.
Yeah. That's why kids sleep until noon on Saturdays and Sundays. You know,
Yeah, because they're trying to
make up for
a massive sleep deficit through the week.
Yeah. And the kids that I see in my practice, that's not a representative group at all, but they are severely sleep deprived, and when they do get to sleep, they have a really poor quality sleep. They have lots of awakenings. They spend a lot of time wandering around at night. Yeah, often, you know, wandering around trying to find food, or wandering around trying to find some sort of social contact on devices.
Okay. So I got up and, you know, at 3 in the morning and I played Minecraft for an hour. And one of the things, and this is kind of a side effect, I guess, that we're not going to go into deeply here, but one of the things that we talk about when we look at ways people get groomed to become objects in the sexual trafficking is they get groomed on social media. Well, you say to yourself, wait a minute, I keep my kid away from all the harmful sites, but I let them play games. Well, every game that you will find today has a chat, and that's where some of the predators lurk, is in the chat rooms for the games. So, you know, you look at that and say, well, wait a minute, now we're into a world of confirmation bias. We're into a world of I don't necessarily believe that what I'm getting is good information. And your kids are playing games where people are contacting them with possibly negative effects. So, you know, it's a really tough world to negotiate. Just between our listeners and the gatepost, I'm really glad I'm not 13 today.
I think the world is probably glad you're not 13, Ralph.
Yeah.
So, we talk about some of the negative effects, and a big one that I think you and I have talked about before is that if you're sitting at a telephone, or you're sitting at a computer, what are you not doing?
You're not doing anything outdoors, and you're not doing anything with your body.
Right, and that could be real detrimental, right?
Yeah. And,
you know, we see today, I said that the children that I see are not represented, or not representative of the population. But just look around our little town here in Mount Pleasant and ask yourselves how many, not just fat kids we have, but grossly obese kids we see.
Yeah, and one of the things, you know, that I've noticed, Jim, because we tend to spend time on university campus, is we have two kinds, it seems, of kids today. And one of the kind is the lean, mean, athletic, and the other kind is the overweight tending to obese. And probably you can ascribe that to a childhood having grown up using a lot of social media, or using your body a lot to play sports.
Okay, yeah.
And
just using your body and getting out and well, I don't know about you, Ralph. You might remember that you and Fred Masson and I used to spend an inordinate amount of time up in our little town, the Sioux, walking around and talking with each other, pretending that we were some people, right?
Yeah, and when we say walking, we would walk from Jim's house, which was in the east end of town, to
Your house, which was kind of in the middle.
in the middle, to a restaurant in the sort of western end of town, and back again, having walked there for coffee, maybe 2 cups of coffee, and we walked back again, and that, if you put it together, that was probably a walk of about 10 miles.
Probably so, yeah.
And that was nothing extraordinary. That was just an average Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Or even an average weekday.
Yeah.
As long as we were back by about 9 o'clock. Yeah.
So you look at that and you say, well, yeah, we walked a lot. We didn't get cars until we could afford them ourselves. Nobody said, you're 16, here's your keys. And I think kids today spend a lot of time in things which are not, in the long run, useful. And, Socrates said 2,000 years BC, the youth of our nation are going to hell in a handbasket. That's always been the lament. But the thing is, I think today it's more easy for children to find outlets that are socially, if not harmful, at least not good for their physicality.
Mm-hmm. So they're not getting out in nature, and you talked before, Ralph, about your experience taking kids into the wilderness. You want to talk about that in terms of social media?
Yeah, we took a group of kids on a 2-week camping trip. Now, this is back in the 1980s, late 80s. And at that time, the big thing was the Walkman.
Okay.
The cell phone had not become yet the ubiquitous computer in the pocket locator that everybody carries around with them today. But they had Walkmans, and these kids were from Toronto and Hamilton, generally southern Ontario, and had never been in the wilderness before. Now, one of the things that we did before we set out in our canoes was we said to all the kids, okay, all Walkmans or other electronic devices, which mainly were transistor radios, have to go in this bag. You'll get them back at the end of the 2 weeks. So we went 2-week camping trip. Well, the first 2 days, the kids were really grousing because they didn't have any tunes.
Seriously in withdrawal.
Electronic deprivation.
Okay.
The other thing that they were worried about, for me, my worry was in my canoe with an amateur who had never been in a canoe before, was he going to engineer us to dump in the lake? But their worry was, we're going to be bitten by a snake and die, or we're going to be found by a bear and eaten. So at the end of about the 4th day, they were over that.
Okay.
And by the end of the trip, most of them were saying, it's kind of interesting to just sit in the canoe here at the edge of the lake and listen to the birds.
Okay.
Or, look, there's a heron, and things like that. So they were much more aware of their environment, and they were much more aware of natural sounds, the wind in the trees, the birds, and I think on the whole, that's a very healthy way to be. Is there's a guy who developed an attention code, and what he said is attention level white, you are totally unaware of your environment. I.e., you've got your headphones in, and you're listening to a podcast on your phone, or you're listening to music, or you're listening to
Or maybe
whatever.
you've got your virtual reality glasses on, right?
Yeah,
That's a possibility.
and so you're totally cut off from your environment. And if people don't swerve around you when you're walking, you're going to bump into them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the way a lot of people are today. They're just not attuned to what is around them. And that, I think, is one of the kind of side effects
Mhm.
of social media, is it cuts people off from their immediate surroundings.
Yeah. Hey, it's a dangerous world out there. It might not be snakes, it might not be bears, but it could be the Lexus that's coming down the street who's not going to stop.
Who's not going to stop? Yeah. Or even on a day like we're having here, where the streets are icy, you say, well, I was coming down the street at 40 miles an hour and this kid stepped out and I hit my brakes, but I just couldn't stop.
Right?
It was like an ice rink underneath the snow. Well, the kid who is totally focused on what he's hearing is not seeing.
Right. When people talk about social media and they're asked, what are the downsides of it? It's give us a few ideas. They say, well, there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of harassment out there. There's a lot of bullying out there. It used to be that for you and I, bullying was, well, for me, Bill Kelly in the Alec Muir school grounds.
Yeah.
Or Bob Doherty.
I'm going to punch you right in the face.
Yeah, and the thing about Bill Kelly or Bob Doherty is I could avoid them, and even though I was kind of a fat kid, I was a pretty good runner.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, my joke is that being bullied in public school taught me two things. It taught me how to run really fast and how to fight really dirty.
yeah, and so there will be these classroom bullies. Now, as it was, these two guys, Bob and Bill, ended up being friends of mine.
Yeah.
We worked it out, mainly because I didn't put up with a lot of their nonsense. I fought back. And people who are being bullied online are in a little different position, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're, for example, you're a 13-year-old girl and
You're told that you're fat.
you're told that you're fat, or you're told that you're ugly, or you're told that you're a slut.
Mm-hmm.
And often, and I hate to say this, but I think this is more true than not, the people who are doing the bullying for that kind of experience are not boys. They're other girls.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So it's the clique of the three social princesses in the class who are calling you fat and ugly.
Yeah.
And if you're 13, you don't have the wherewithal to say, they're doing this because I'm smart and I'm a competitor. And I could, if I wanted to, join their clique, but I don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yeah.
That is,
That's the whole premise of that movie, Mean Girls.
yeah,
And, we've got a lot of those, kicking around. So, with cyberbullying, you don't have a chance to fight back.
right.
With Bob Doherty, if he grabbed me around the neck, I could at least, hit him with my right hand and right in the gut. hit his belt buckle and broke my right hand, but that's, you know,
But he knew it.
yeah.
And the thing is that, you know, and this goes back to what I said about it taught me how to run really fast.
Mhm.
Well, there's no running away from the electronics.
Right.
And the thing is that if they said it 2 weeks ago,
Hmm.
it's still there
It's going to be there for forever.
for forever.
Right.
And so a lot of people who get, you know, a cyberbully incident, 2 weeks later, they're still revisiting that. They're
Right.
going back to that post and saying, am I really fat? And I don't feel fat.
Hmm. Monica Lewinsky, who is a name that some people might remember from the Bill Clinton years, did a TED Talk, and she talked about a boy, I think from Rutgers, that was bullied online, and he ended up committing suicide, you know, because of, you know, the toxic stuff that was going on. Maybe we could find that one and put it up under Learn More.
Yeah,
You know, she too was bullied, I think, as a former intern in the White House.
yeah,
That's a whole other story. But we see this a lot. I mean, people having kind of toxic reactions to other folks and what other folks have to say. And particularly if it's not, you know, not true, or if it's something that perhaps you have difficulty dealing with.
yeah. And one of the things, you know, people talk about social media as a source of hate speech.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're particularly a young person, but a person of any age who is marginalized for reasons of color, reasons of gender preference, reasons of whatever,
Economic reasons.
economic reasons. You know, everybody else in class shows up in a new dress for their class picture, and you show up in the equivalent of a flour sack, and that's because that's what you can afford. That's something that not only people will notice, but they will make sure you know that they noticed
Right.
on social media.
That's one of the things about social media that I've sort of learned, I guess, that everybody has a fantastic life on social media. Much better life than I do.
Right, and
I wonder if that's really true.
well, I think it's not true, Jim, because my take on it is that, for example, my wife and I just got a new puppy.
Okay.
Now, our new puppy is stubborn. She's been hard to house train. She is constantly testing who's the alpha dog in this threesome, and she wants to be. So you say, okay, what do we find on social media about a dog? So you go on social media and you find all these people who are showing their perfect puppy.
Uh-huh.
Oh yes, I was able to house train her in 2 days. Yeah, and it's been 4 weeks for us, and we're still not perfect. Gee, we must be failures.
Gotcha.
So, you know,
Mhm.
everybody else in anything, however trivial or significant,
Is perfect.
is perfect. And you are obviously a serious failure in whatever area.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about social media as connecting people, but we also have talked about social media disconnecting people. I think in the weeks ahead, we're going to continue to look at some of this connectivity and disconnectivity. But until next time, this is Jim
And Ralph,
saying,
keep your stick on the ice, because we're all in this
together.
together.